My dad tried to introduce his girlfriend, and it turned out to be my ex-best friend's mom. My dad walked into the living room, looking all proud and nervous at the same time. He cleared his throat and said, "I want you to meet someone very special to me." I thought it was just going to be some random woman I'd never seen before, but then she stepped out from behind him, smiling like she owned the whole room. My stomach dropped. It was her, my ex-best friend's mom. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My mind was screaming, my hands were shaking, and I swear I almost dropped the glass of water I was holding. Dad had no idea. He was standing there, grinning, waiting for me to say something nice. But all I could see was the face of the woman who'd been part of one of the darkest times in my life. The reason my friendship ended, the reason everything fell apart. And then she looked me right in the eye, like she recognized me, like she knew exactly who I was. That was the moment I realized nothing in my house, in my family, or in my life was ever going to be the same again. But before I tell you what happened next, let me back up a little. So it all started a few months before that shocking moment. My dad had been acting different, and honestly, it was kind of suspicious. He was always on his phone, smiling at texts like some teenager in love. He'd go out more often, coming home late with this goofy grin plastered on his face. My siblings didn't really notice, but I did. I kept asking him what was going on, and he'd just brush it off, saying, "Don't worry about it." Then there were the weekends he'd suddenly vanish. Normally, Dad's the kind of guy who spends Saturdays fixing stuff around the house or watching sports. But out of nowhere, he started making excuses like, "I need to run errands," or "I'll be back later, don't wait up." At first, I thought maybe he was trying to surprise us with something, like a vacation or maybe even a proposal. I mean, he'd been single for years after Mom and him split, so the idea of him finding someone new wasn't that crazy. But still, the way he acted made it obvious he was hiding something big. One night, I overheard him on the phone. He was laughing, talking in this soft voice I hadn't heard in forever. He said something like, "I can't wait for you to meet them. I think it's time." My heart sank because I knew he was talking about us, his kids. He wanted us to meet this mysterious woman. I didn't know it then, but that phone call was the start of everything. The next few weeks felt normal on the outside, but inside, I was losing my mind with curiosity. I even asked him straight up, "Dad, are you dating someone?" He just gave me that smirk dads give when they don't want to admit something, but also don't want to lie. That smirk basically said yes. And honestly, part of me was happy for him. I mean, I wanted him to find love again. He'd been through enough heartbreak. But the other part of me, the suspicious part, kept whispering that there was something off about the whole thing. Then came the big day. He told us he had a surprise, and we should all be home Sunday evening. My siblings thought it was going to be pizza or some kind of family outing, but deep down, I knew. This was it. This was the reveal. I didn't expect her, though. When she walked into that room, every single memory I had of her daughter, my ex-best friend, came flooding back. The late-night talks, the secrets we shared, the way we suddenly stopped being friends because of something her mom did. And now, that same woman was standing in my living room, holding my dad's hand like she belonged there. I couldn't process it. My heart was pounding in my ears, and I felt this rush of anger, fear, and betrayal all at once. Then she opened her mouth. She said something that made my skin crawl, and it changed everything in that moment. She looked me dead in the eyes, smiled, and said, "Oh wow, you've grown so much since the last time I saw you." My whole body went cold. She wasn't pretending she didn't know me. She wasn't acting confused or awkward. No, she was calling it out. She wanted me to know she remembered. My dad, oblivious as ever, laughed and said, "Wait, you two already know each other? That's perfect. Makes this so much easier." He thought he'd just solved the problem of introducing strangers, but to me, it felt like the floor had been ripped out from under my feet. I forced out a laugh, trying not to let my voice shake. "Yeah, I know her." That's all I said. I couldn't even bring myself to say how I knew her. I glanced at her, and she just kept smiling, like she was enjoying this sick little game. Inside, my head was spinning. Did Dad know? Did he even have a clue about the connection? No way. He would have never picked her if he knew the history. But why was she acting so calm, like this was totally fine? I excused myself, muttering something about needing water, and went straight to the kitchen just to breathe. My heart was racing. My hands shook as I gripped the counter. That woman, the mom who ruined my friendship, who I swore I'd never see again, was now sitting in my living room, dating my dad. And if Dad had his way, she could eventually become my stepmom. The thought made me feel sick. But here's the thing, Dad wasn't dumb. He noticed me acting weird. He came into the kitchen a few minutes later, all confused. "Hey, you good? You seem off." I wanted to scream at him, to tell him everything, but I couldn't, not yet. Because if I told him right then and there, he'd either think I was lying or just being overdramatic. He was way too deep into his little romance bubble to hear me clearly. So I just said, "Yeah, I'm fine, just surprised, that's all." He nodded, bought it, and went back out. I stayed behind, trying to calm myself down. The next few days were torture. She started showing up more often, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to drop by. Every time she came, I kept my distance, watching her carefully. She never slipped up. She never mentioned her daughter. It was like she was trying to erase that whole part of her life in front of us. But here's what made it worse. Dad was falling harder and harder for her. He looked happier than I'd seen him in years. And my siblings, they liked her. They thought she was nice and funny. It was like I was the only one who could see through her fake smile. And I kept asking myself, why now? Why her? Out of all the women in the world, why did Dad have to choose her? I tried to convince myself maybe I was overreacting. Maybe she wasn't as bad as I remembered. But then, one night, I overheard something that killed that thought instantly. Dad had gone outside to take a call. I was upstairs, but the window was open, and I could hear everything. It was her voice, low and serious. She said something like, "They can't find out about the past. Not yet." My heart stopped. I pressed myself against the window, straining to catch more. But the conversation ended too quickly. She had just confirmed it. She knew exactly what she was hiding. That's when I realized this wasn't just awkward. This wasn't just uncomfortable. This was dangerous. Because if she was hiding the past from my dad, and I was the only one who knew, that put me in the middle of something I wasn't ready for. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the next weekend she showed up again. This time, she brought someone with her. Someone I hadn't seen in years. When I opened the door and saw who was standing there, my jaw literally dropped. It was my ex-best friend. I froze at the doorway, my hand still on the knob. Standing there, awkwardly shifting her weight from one foot to the other, was her, my ex-best friend. The girl I hadn't spoken to in years. The girl who knew exactly why we weren't friends anymore. Her mom beamed like this was the most normal thing in the world. "Look who I brought. I thought it would be nice for you two to reconnect." I wanted to slam the door in both their faces. My chest tightened and I could feel heat rising to my cheeks. My ex-best friend's eyes flicked up to mine, and for a split second, there was this flash of recognition. Shock, guilt, maybe even anger. But then she looked away, like she couldn't stand to hold my gaze. Dad came rushing to the door behind me, grinning like an idiot. "Oh, you must be ex-best friend's name. Wow, it's been a long time. Come in, come in." He had no idea, none. He thought this was some sweet little reunion. I stepped back because I couldn't think of what else to do. My brain felt like it was buzzing, my throat dry. They walked in, and suddenly, the house felt way too small. I couldn't breathe with all of them in the same room. She sat on the couch like she owned the place, and my ex-best friend sat stiffly beside her, arms crossed, avoiding eye contact with me. Dad started chatting like this was a casual family get-together. "You kids used to be inseparable, huh? Always running around the house, staying up too late. Brings back memories." I bit my tongue so hard I thought I might draw blood. Memories? Yeah, I had memories. Memories of betrayal. Memories of everything blowing up because of her mom. The tension was insane. Everyone else was acting like this was fine, but under the surface, it felt like a bomb was ticking. I kept stealing glances at my ex-best friend, waiting for her to say something, anything, but she just kept staring at the floor. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up abruptly and muttered, "I need some air." I went outside, closing the door maybe a little harder than I should have. My hands were shaking, my breathing uneven. But the thing is, she followed me. I heard the door creak open behind me, and suddenly she was standing there, her arms still crossed, but her eyes finally locked on mine. "Look," she said quietly, "I didn't know she was dating your dad, okay? I swear I didn't." Her voice made my stomach twist. It had been so long since I'd heard it. Part of me wanted to believe her, but another part, the louder part, was screaming that she was lying. "Then why are you here?" I snapped. "Why now? Why after everything?" She winced, and for a second I thought she might actually apologize. But instead, she shook her head. "This wasn't my choice. She made me come." She glanced back at the house. "She wants us to act like none of it ever happened." That sent chills down my spine. None of it ever happened? What exactly was she trying to erase? Before I could say anything, the door opened again, and her mom's voice cut through the air. "Everything okay out here?" She smiled too sweetly, but her eyes were sharp, watching both of us. My ex-best friend went silent immediately, shrinking under her mom's stare. And just like that, I realized, whatever power her mom had over her back then, she still had now. I mumbled something like, "Yeah, we're fine," and stormed back inside. The rest of the night was unbearable. Dad and my siblings laughed, chatted, ate snacks. Meanwhile, I sat there in silence, feeling like I was trapped in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. When they finally left, Dad turned to me, grinning. "See, that wasn't so bad, right? Maybe this is a good thing, a fresh start." I couldn't even respond. A fresh start? More like reopening a wound I'd tried so hard to close. And then, just when I thought things couldn't possibly get worse, they did. A few days later, I came home from school and heard voices upstairs. I thought Dad was on a call, but when I got closer, I realized it wasn't him. It was her. She was in his room. I froze on the stairs, listening. She was saying something in a low, sharp voice. If they ever find out the truth, everything falls apart. My blood ran cold. What truth? What was she hiding from my dad? My heart was racing so loud I thought she'd hear it from the hallway. If they ever find out the truth, everything falls apart. Those words looped in my head over and over. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing, trying to hear more. But then the sound of footsteps came, and I panicked, bolting down the stairs before anyone caught me eavesdropping. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Smiling, lying, whispering secrets in my own house. What truth was she talking about? Was it about me, my dad, my ex-best friend? I decided then I needed answers. The next day, I started small. I casually asked Dad what he knew about her past, like where she grew up, her family, all that. He shrugged and said, "Not much, honestly. She doesn't like talking about the past, and I respect that." That right there made my stomach drop. Not only was she hiding something, but Dad wasn't even asking questions. He was blindfolded by love. So I took matters into my own hands. I tried talking to my ex-best friend at school. I cornered her by her locker and asked straight up, "What is your mom hiding?" She froze, eyes wide like I'd caught her off guard. "I can't talk about this here," she whispered. "Just drop it, okay?" That was all she gave me before running off, which only made me want to dig deeper. Later that week, I found my chance. Dad left his phone on the counter while he was in the shower. Normally, I'd never invade his privacy, but at that point, I felt like I didn't have a choice. My hands shook as I scrolled through his texts with her. Most were normal, boring couple stuff, hearts, good mornings, miss you already. But then I found one message from her that made me stop cold. She had texted him, "I'm scared they'll hate me once they know, especially your oldest." My blood ran cold. She was talking about me. I snapped a picture of the message on my phone before putting his back exactly where I found it. My hands were sweating, my heart pounding. Whatever she was hiding, she already knew it had something to do with me. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. She wasn't just sneaking into our lives, she was manipulating everything, making sure Dad stayed blind while I drowned in questions. That weekend, she and my ex-best friend came over again. I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled my ex-best friend aside into the backyard and demanded answers. "You have to tell me what's going on. I know she's hiding something. I know she's scared I'll find out. Just say it." Her hands trembled as she hugged herself, looking down at the grass. "You don't understand. If I tell you, it'll ruin everything." I stepped closer, my voice low. "It's already ruined." Tears welled up in her eyes. For a second, I thought she was about to finally spill it. But then her mom's voice cut through the air again, sharp and commanding. "What are you two whispering about?" She jumped back like she'd been burned, shaking her head at me, silently begging me not to say anything. That's when I realized just how much control her mom still had over her back then. I felt like screaming, like grabbing Dad by the shoulders and shaking him until he saw what I saw. But I stayed quiet, watching, waiting. That night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I sat down with my journal and started writing everything out. Every weird detail, every overheard word, every text I'd seen. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was evidence. But then, just when I was finally piecing it all together, something happened that nearly blew the whole thing open. It was late, maybe past midnight, when I went downstairs to grab some water. The kitchen light was off, but the glow from the living room was on. I thought maybe Dad had fallen asleep watching TV. But no, she was there, alone, sitting on our couch. When she saw me, she didn't even flinch. She just smiled. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked softly. I froze in the doorway, every muscle in my body screaming to run. Then she leaned forward, her voice dropping low, and said something that made my skin crawl. "You know, you and I really should talk, before you go digging into things you shouldn't." Her words hung in the air like a trap. "Before you go digging into things you shouldn't." I gripped the doorway so hard my knuckles turned white. "What are you talking about?" I asked, though my voice came out weaker than I wanted. She leaned back on the couch like she had all the power in the world. "Curiosity is dangerous, especially when it comes to family. Sometimes the truth does more harm than lies." My stomach twisted. "So there is something you're hiding." She smirked. "We're all hiding something, even your dad, even you." Her eyes glittered in the dim light, and for a moment, I felt like I wasn't looking at a mom or a girlfriend. I was staring at someone who enjoyed watching people squirm. I wanted to scream at her, to drag my dad downstairs right then and force her to confess. But before I could move, she lowered her voice and said, "If you push this, you're going to destroy your father. Are you ready to be the reason he loses everything he's built?" That hit me like a punch in the gut. She knew exactly where to strike. Dad had finally found happiness again, and the thought of ripping that away, it made me hesitate. And she saw that hesitation. She thrived on it. But then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement on the stairs. My ex-best friend was standing there, half hidden in the shadows, listening. Her face was pale, her fists clenched. "Stop," she whispered, her voice cracked. "Just stop." Her mom's head snapped around, eyes narrowing. "Go back upstairs." But for the first time ever, my ex-best friend didn't move. She looked at me instead, her eyes full of something I hadn't seen in years. Anger, but not at me, at her. "You want the truth?" she said, her voice shaking but growing stronger. "Fine, I'll tell you." My heart skipped a beat. Her mom shot up from the couch, fury flashing in her eyes. "Don't you dare!" But it was too late. The words came spilling out. The truth wasn't some simple secret. It wasn't just about me and her mom. It was about my dad, about why my parents split, about how she wasn't some new woman in his life. She had been there before, years ago. She was the reason my family broke apart. Everything inside me went silent. My ears buzzed, my chest hollow. She had been in my life long before this, hiding in the background, pulling strings. And now she was back, trying to rewrite history. My ex-best friend was crying now, her voice raw. He deserves to know. They all do. For the first time, her mom's mask slipped. The sweet smile vanished, replaced with something cold, dangerous. She turned to me, her voice low, venomous. If you tell him, you'll regret it, both of you. That was the moment Dad came down the stairs, rubbing his eyes, confused. What's going on? Why are you all up? Silence. No one moved. Her mom was the first to recover, plastering that fake smile back on. Nothing, honey, just a little late-night talk. But Dad wasn't stupid. He looked at me, then at my ex-best friend, then at her. He knew something was off. And right there, standing in that living room, I realized something terrifying. The truth was out. The lies were cracking. And no matter what happened next, nothing in our family would ever go back to normal. Because now, it wasn't just about her being my dad's girlfriend. It was about her being the woman who had already destroyed my family once. And she wasn't done yet. A week later, things in the house were tense. Dad didn't say much, but I could tell he was suspicious. My ex-best friend stopped coming around, and her mom, well, she disappeared for a while. I thought maybe it was over. Maybe we'd dodged the bullet. But then, one night, I came home late and found an envelope slipped under my bedroom door. No name, no return address, just one sheet of paper inside. Scrawled in neat handwriting were 6 words that made my blood run cold. If I can't have him, no one will. And under it was a photo of my family, taken from outside our house.